Introduction to Psychology Part 2. Lecture notes created by Dr. Michael J. Alicea, Adjunct Professor, Miami-Dade College, Social Science Department, Kendall Campus. Mary Whiten Calkins was an American psychologist who conducted research on memory, personality, and dreams, established a psychological laboratory at Wellesley College, wrote a well-received textbook titled Introduction to Psychology, and was the first woman to be elected president of the American Psychological Association, APA. Although she completed all the requirements for a PhD in psychology at Harvard, Harvard refused to grant her the degree because she was a woman. Margaret Floy Washburn was the first American woman to officially earn a PhD in psychology. In 1908, she published an influential text titled The Animal Mind. In 1921, she became the second woman elected president of the APA. Frances 100. Sumner was the first African American to receive a PhD in psychology. Sumner published on a wide variety of topics and chaired the psychology department at Howard University, which has produced more black psychologists than all other American colleges and universities combined. One of his students, Kenneth Bancroft Clark, played an instrumental role in the U.S. Supreme Court's 1954 decision to end segregated schools. Clark became the first black president of the APA in 1970. Sigmund Freud was an Austrian physician and the founder of psychoanalysis, which emphasized human behavior is motivated by unconscious conflicts, which are almost always sexual or aggressive in nature. Past experiences, especially childhood experiences, as critical to the formation of adult personality and behavior. Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality also provided the basis for a distinct form of psychotherapy. In the early 1900s, the school of psychology called behaviorism emerged as a dominating force. It emphasized the study of overt behavior, observable behaviors that could be objectively measured and verified. Ivan Pavlov was the Russian physiologist whose pioneering research on learning contributed to the development of behaviorism. He discovered a basic learning process that involves the association of stimuli. John B. Watson was an American psychologist who championed behaviorism, emphasizing the study of observable behavior and rejecting the study of mental processes. The goal of behaviorists was to discover the fundamental principles of learning. B.F. Skinner was an American psychologist and, like Watson, a strong proponent of behaviorism. Between Watson and Skinner, behaviorism dominated American psychology for almost half a century. Early philosophers also laid the groundwork for the nature-nurture issue, which continues to be central to psychology. Today, the debate is often framed in terms of the interaction between heredity, nature, and environment, nurture, rather than a competition between the two. Physiology is a branch of biology that studies the functions and parts of living organisms. Physiologists' early scientific discoveries led to the idea that scientific methods could be applied to issues of human behavior and thinking. In the 1950s, a new school of thought called humanistic psychology emerged. It was so distinctly different from both psychoanalysis and behaviorism that it was sometimes referred to as the third force in American psychology. Carl Rogers was the American psychologist who founded the School of Humanistic Psychology, which emphasized conscious experiences, including each person's unique potential for psychological growth and self-direction, self-determination, free will, and the importance of choice in human behavior. Abraham Maslow was the American humanistic psychologist who developed a theory of motivation that emphasized psychological growth. The biological perspective emphasizes studying the physical bases of human and animal behavior, including the nervous system, endocrine system, immune system, and genetics. Neuroscience refers to the study of the nervous system, especially the brain. The psychodynamic perspective emphasizes the importance of unconscious influences, early life experiences, and interpersonal relationships. The behavioral perspective emphasizes how behavior is acquired or modified by environmental causes. The humanistic perspective focuses on the motivation of people to grow psychologically, the influence of interpersonal relationships on a person's self-concept, and the importance of choice and self-direction in striving to reach one's potential. The positive psychology perspective focuses on the study of positive emotions and psychological states, positive individual traits, and the social institutions that foster those qualities in individuals and communities. Positive psychology seeks to counterbalance psychology's emphasis on psychological problems and disorders. Topics that fall under the umbrella of positive psychology include personal happiness, optimism, creativity, resilience, character, strength, and wisdom. Positive psychology is also focused on developing therapeutic techniques that increase personal well-being, rather than just alleviating the symptoms of psychological disorders. The cognitive perspective focuses on the important role of mental processes in how people process and remember information, develop language, solve problems, and think. The cross-cultural perspective, embodied in cross-cultural psychology, studies the differences among cultures and the influences of culture on behavior and mental processes. Cross-cultural psychology emphasizes that common behaviors are not always universal, such as social loafing, found in some cultures, but not others. Culture and human behavior. Culture refers to the attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors shared by a group of people and communicated from one generation to another. The tendency to use your own culture is the standard for judging other cultures, as called ethnocentrism. Individualistic cultures emphasize the needs and goals of the individual over the needs and goals of the group. Collectivistic cultures emphasize the needs and goals of the group over the needs and goals of the individual. The evolutionary perspective refers to the application of the principles of evolution to explain psychological processes and phenomena. This perspective has grown out of a renewed interest in Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, which is based on the principle of natural selection. Psychologists who take the evolutionary perspective assume that psychological processes also are subject to the principle of natural selection. Biological psychology, which involves the study of the physiological aspects of behavior and mental processes. Neuroscience is included in this category. Clinical psychology, which involves extensive training in evaluating and diagnosing psychological disorders, psychotherapy techniques, and psychological testing. Cognitive psychology, which involves the investigation of mental processes, including reasoning and thinking, problem-solving, memory, perception, mental imagery, and language. Counseling psychology, which involves helping people of all ages adjust, adapt, and cope with personal and interpersonal problems in such areas as relationships, work, education, marriage, child-rearing, and aging. Educational psychology, which involves the study of how people of all ages learn. Educational psychologists help develop the instructional methods and materials used to train people in both educational and work settings. Experimental psychology, which is the term traditionally used to describe research involving such basic topics as sensory and perceptual processes, principles of learning, emotion, and motivation. Developmental psychology, which involves the study of the physical, social, and psychological changes that occur at different ages and stages of the lifespan. Health psychology, which involves a focus on the role of psychological factors in the development, prevention, and treatment of illness. Industrial organizational psychology, which is concerned with the relationship between people and work. Personality psychology, which involves the study of the nature of human personality, including individual differences, the characteristics that make each person unique, and how those characteristics originated and developed. Social psychology, which involves the exploration of how people are affected by their social environments, including how people think about and influence others. Sports psychology, which involves using psychological theory and knowledge to enhance athletic motivation, performance, and consistency. Applied psychology, which involves applying the finding of basic psychology to diverse areas. Examples include sports psychology, media psychology, forensic psychology, rehabilitation psychology.